stepsister arrived penniless at my door. Now, because I declined to accept her, everyone is against me. Hello Redditor, I'm 28F, and I'm in a scenario that's challenging all of my preconceived notions about self-preservation, forgiveness, and family. Yesterday, my stepsister Emily, 30, who has been tormenting me since we were little, came to my house with everything she owned and begged me to take her in. I'm confused and in need of an unbiased opinion to see if my choice was the right one, or if I was being petty and harsh. For background, my mother died when I was 8 years old. It was a heartbreaking loss for both my father and me. Dad went full-time into his business, so I was left with a changing cast of relatives and babysitters. Late at night, I would frequently find him hunched over the kitchen table with an empty whiskey glass in his hand. Everything changed once more when I turned 10. Dad made his remarriage public. I thought Susan, my soon-to-be stepmother, was all right. Her grin was contagious, and she would frequently bring me small presents like books, hair clips, and once, a stunning silver necklace that I cherished. However, it was Emily, her daughter, who would, in ways I could never have predicted, come to define my adolescent. Emily had always been the life of the party, even before she came into our lives. I wasn't the gregarious, self-assured, or effortlessly charming person that she was. Emily was outgoing and gregarious. I was reserved and bookish. People, including our parents, gravitated towards her because of the way she lit up a room. I was thrilled to have a sister at first. Being the only child my entire life, it seemed like a dream come true to have someone to talk to late at night and share secrets with. How innocent I was. Almost as soon as they moved in, the first indications of problems emerged. Because she was the older sister, Emily insisted on having the larger bedroom. Dad just shrugged and said, "Can't you just let her have this one thing?" When I protested. "It'll enable her to adapt." It was the first of many occasions that he would put Emily's needs ahead of mine. Emily's true colors started to emerge as the weeks stretched into months. At home, she would inadvertently ruin my belongings or take my clothes without asking, but she would always apologize and smile, "Sis." That totally tricked our parents. Emily would get all hot and bothered when I tried to inform Dad or Susan, saying I was simply jealous and trying to start problems in our new family. "How come the two of you can't get along?" Dad would rub his temples and moan. "Emily is really attempting to be your sister. You must come to her aid." Not only at home, though. Emily's horror reigned even at school, where her popularity bestowed upon her a sneaky sort of authority. She told others I had lice or that I had wet the bed, spreading gossip about me. Except for me, she would invite every student in our grade to her birthday celebrations. When I would cry when I got home, "Oh, honey, I'm sure it was simply an oversight," Susan would pat my head. "Emily will never intentionally leave you out, however she did. All the time." Furthermore, the bullying and exclusion grew worse over time. I started in the school chorus when I was 13. I've always loved to sing, and I used to use music as a form of escape. Emily, though, later decided she would like to go too. All of the solos I had fought so hard to earn suddenly went to her. She was so talented that the choir teacher gushed over her, and I was put in the back row. Emily used to make fun of my voice when I would practice at home. She would make loud, wobbling noises until I would stop, embarrassed beyond belief. When I objected, Dad would tell me that Emily was only kidding. Sisters act in this manner. You shouldn't give it too much thought. However, it was grave. It seemed like a chunk of myself was being removed every day. Emily's abuse and our parents' deliberate ignorance were destroying my confidence, my feeling of self-worth, and my optimism for the future. I was 15 at the time of the incident that still bothers me. In a moment of weakness, I told Emily about my crush on a schoolboy because I was desperate to connect with her. Despite Emily's influence, Steve was hilarious, compassionate, and one of the few people who genuinely spoke to me. I reasoned that maybe, just maybe, we would become closer by revealing this secret. Rather, Emily made the most embarrassing incident of my childhood out of it. In addition to telling Steve, she joked around and got him to ask me out. I will never forget the mixture of anxiety and exhilaration I experienced when he came up to me in the packed cafe. And when he declared rather loudly that it was all a joke by my dear sister, I will never forget how swiftly those sentiments went to horror and embarrassment. My nightmares occasionally still have our peers laughing. The repercussions at home, though, wounded much more. Emily beat me to it when I tried to inform Dad and Susan what had happened. She recounted, through crocodile tears, how she was only attempting to assist me in talking to my crush, how everything was a misunderstanding, and how offended she was that I was manipulating the situation to make her appear terrible. Susan stroked Emily's back and said, "I'm sure Emily didn't mean any harm. She was probably just trying to help you come out of your shell." Emily sniffled. Dad gave a nod of agreement. Perhaps if you were more outgoing like Emily is, these miscommunications might not occur. Their comments struck like a blow to the body. They were not only failing to keep me safe, but they were also somehow attributing my own brutality to Emily. Throughout our adolescent years, it was a trend that kept happening. Emily was allowed to keep the family car when she obtained her driver's license before me, even though she had only been caught drinking at a party a few months before. Upon obtaining my license, I requested to use the vehicle for an academic assignment. I was advised that I still needed more maturity. Emily's grade dropped because she was too preoccupied with her social life and extracurricular activities. I was punished for not working hard enough when my straight dropped to B's because of the stress and anxiety of having to deal with bullying all the time. Not even our accomplishments received the same treatment. After Emily was selected for the cheerleading squad, Dad and Susan invited all of the family to a lavish celebration. I received very little recognition for winning a statewide writing competition, other than a slap on the back and a "that's nice, honey." The ongoing favoritism had a cost. I struggled with self-esteem issues that I'm currently working through in treatment, and I acquired terrible anxiety and sadness. Some days I was so afraid to face another day of Emily's suffering and our parents' indifference that I was unable to move from my bed. My grades plummeted, I distanced myself from the few friends I had managed to maintain, and I began to think that perhaps, as Emily had always said, I was the true issue. I broke down and told Dad everything one very bad night after Emily had unintentionally erased a term paper I had been working on for weeks. I sobbed my way through years of suffering, describing the bullying I experienced from Emily, my social isolation, and my ongoing sense of inferiority to my own family. I briefly noticed a spark of worry, shame, or possibly even rage in his eyes. However, Emily entered the room wondering what was wrong with such innocence and uncertainty. Then, in an instant, the moment vanished. Upon seeing her, Dad's expression softened, and I realized I had lost once more. His tone was dismissive as he continued, "I'm sure your sister didn't mean to delete your paper. These events take place. It should have had support. Along with everything else, you two are really stressed up about school. If only you made an effort to be more amiable." That's when I stopped paying attention. It was obvious that our parents would always view Emily as the golden kid and me as the troublemaker, regardless of what Emily accomplished. I couldn't alter the dynamic that had been established years prior, no matter what I said or did. I considered education to be my lifeline when I turned 18. In a frantic attempt to start over, I applied to as many distant schools as I could. I felt like I could breathe freely for the first time in years on the day I departed for college. I made a self-promise to never allow someone to have that much influence over me ever again. The past 10 years have been devoted to creating a new life for myself, far from the toxic environment of my early years. It's not been simple. It takes time for the wounds caused by years of abuse and parental favoritism to heal. Rebuilding my self-esteem, learning to trust others, and believing that I deserve happiness and tranquility have all required a lot of work on my part in therapy. I've grown in a career I love, acquired friends who embrace me for who I am, and even launched a tiny side business selling my artwork online. Something our parents discounted as a nice pastime and Emily would constantly make fun of. Every little accomplishment seems like a win and takes me one step closer to becoming the confident, fearful girl I once was. Since Emily left for college, I've hardly spoken to her at all. Our only interactions are during required family get-togethers where we pretend to be polite but distant. These interactions are often tense since Emily frequently makes passive-aggressive remarks about my appearance, my profession, or the fact that I don't have a committed relationship. Even though I've grown to accept these remarks, they nevertheless hurt and make me think of the gullible girl I once was. At best, my relationship with Susan and Dad is tense. We have the occasional conversation, but it's brief. I've given up trying to explain why I'm so aloof. They still don't get it. Keeping people at a distance is easier than having to live with the hurt of their treachery all the time. I've learned from the family over the years that Emily's life hasn't turned out exactly how she probably imagined it would. She has a history of broken relationships and is unable to commit to anything for the long run. She has had a similarly miserable career, constantly changing jobs. She never stops blaming her coworkers or supervisors for her mistakes. Even while I try not to think about it too much, there is a part of me that can't help but believe it is karma. A part of me also questions whether Emily's difficulties stem in part from the way she was raised, always being told she was flawless and never having to answer to anyone for her behavior. Though, in rather different ways, our parents did disappoint us both in certain ways. This is where the present circumstance enters the picture. I heard frantic knocking on my flat door yesterday evening. I was a little surprised to see someone and briefly wondered if anything wasn't right. I was shocked and froze as I opened the door. Emily was standing there surrounded by boxes and bags, not at all like the polished, put-together person she typically presents to the public. Her clothing were rumpled, her mascara was running, and she appeared to have not slept in days. Emily started giving me a heartfelt explanation before I could even begin to comprehend what was going on. It seems that she had lost her job due to a conflict with her supervisor, which she adamantly maintains was not her fault. Emily's 6-month boyfriend had dumped her, saying she was too demanding, according to his comments. There was nowhere else, she said. Over the next 3 months, our parents will be away on the long-planned European tour in honor of their anniversary, Emily remarked, her voice shaking as she stated, I was her last hope. She begged me to let her stay for just a few weeks so she could get back on her feet, and I stood there, dumbfounded. She spoke quickly and apologized profusely for how she had treated me when we were younger. She also expressed her regret for her actions and her desire for a second chance to mend our differences. She committed to being the sister she deserved to be from the beginning. If I just gave her the chance to assist with household chores and do anything. A part of me was dubious right away. As Emily has always been cunning, this wouldn't be the first time she pretended to be sorry in order to obtain what she wants. I recalled all the times she had shown regret to me in front of our parents, just to start tormenting me again as soon as we were by ourselves. However, I also experienced a slight sense of remorse. She is family despite everything, and she appeared very desperate. Perhaps this was my chance, murmured the fearful little girl inside of me, the one who always wished for a genuine sister. I finally made up my mind after what seemed like a lifetime but was probably just a few minutes of mental deliberation. I told Emily that I was unable to take her in, as kindly as I could but firmly. I said that I couldn't risk jeopardizing my mental well-being or the stability I've fought so hard to attain since our past was too terrible. I even offered to pay for a few nights at a hotel while she worked through her issues. I offered to assist her find a shelter or temporary lodging. However, I refused to let her enter my house. Emily's mood abruptly changed and was startling. It was like someone turned off a tap when the weeping stopped. She lashed out, calling me callous and selfish, her face hardening into a familiar sneer. She said that I was incapable of forgiving others and that I harbored little grievances. Her remarks brought back a wave of memories. She would always go from being kind to being violent in an instant, leaving me feeling hurt and bewildered. Emily vowed to tell our whole family how I had abandoned her when she was in need before she left. She warned me that I would regret it, and that, like it had for her, karma would catch up with me. I felt a wave of shame and relief as I saw her scream off down the corridor, pulling her baggage with her. I'm sitting here in my peaceful flat now, wondering if I made the right choice. I feel somewhat justified in defending the life I've created for myself. I consider how far I've come in treatment and how much effort I've put into building a calm, drama-free life for myself. It seems like letting Emily in would be a betrayal of that advancement and a return to the turmoil and suffering of my past. However, a part of me questions whether I'm being very severe and whether I ought to have given her an opportunity to demonstrate her improvement. I can't help but notice how needy she appeared, and I wonder whether my own incapacity to forgive is the reason I've just consigned her to homelessness. My phone has been inundated with texts from relatives who live far away. They're berating me for abandoning my family, claiming that I owe Emily assistance in her hour of need and that blood is thicker than water. With a voice full of rage and despair, Dad called from Europe. He said, I thought you two had moved on from all of this. Emily is your sibling. Family should come first at all times. His words unleashed a torrent of recollections. Every time he'd said anything like that, always looking on me to be the one to give in, to overlook, to pardon Emily's actions. I attempted to clarify my situation, to let him know about the years of suffering and my advancements, but he interrupted me. He dismissive stated, the past is the past, you must mature and move forward. Emily needs you right now. It was as if I were that defenseless adolescent all over again, my emotions disregarded and my suffering denied. I was exhausted and conflicted when the call finished. A part of me wanted to yell at him in order to finally get through to him what I had gone through. Something else was plain depressing, recognizing that not much had changed after all these years. Shortly later, Susan texted, brimming with guilt about her passive-aggressive behavior. She said, I know you have your reasons, but if this is how you treat family, I can't help but feel we failed somewhere. You know, Emily has always looked up to you. That last bit had me laughing so hard I could have cried. Emily, are you staring at me? It felt like a terrible joke since it was so unlike the reality of our childhood. However, it's possible that our parents' perception of a non-existent relationship was a contributing factor in the issue all along, putting their aspirations for a flawless mixed family on us and never addressing the underlying problems. I kept thinking about all the occasions when Emily's actions had been made possible by our parents' deliberate blindness and favoritism as I sat there, staring at Susan's message. Emily once borrowed my car without my permission during her time in high school and got into a minor collision. Dad paid for the repairs and gave me a lesson about treating my sister more kindly instead of punishing her. Or all the family dinners where Emily would make mean remarks about my appearance or weight, and Susan would just laugh and say, You too. In your sisterly banter, they continued to view Emily as their idealized golden child, even in her current state of unemployment and homelessness. Her partner was too demanding, her boss was unjust, and I was too hard on her. It was always someone else's fault. My head was spinning from how familiar the pattern was. I chose to get in touch with Marilyn, our cousin. Even at Emily's darkest moments, she had consistently shown me kindness, and I trusted that her perspective on our family dynamics was more balanced. Marilyn listened to my explanations but remained firm. You bear no accountability for Emily's decisions. She stated that considering your past, you went above and above what many would have done to assist her in finding housing. Never allow anyone to make you feel bad about defending yourself. Although Marilyn's words were comforting, they were unable to calm the raging tempest of emotions within me. I couldn't help but remember back to a discussion I'd had about forgiveness with my therapist several months prior. Had Emily truly changed? When I declined her request, she quickly became angry and threatened, even though her tearful apology at my door appeared serious at the time. Growing up, I had witnessed this exact pattern several times. Emily would seem kind and remorseful when she wanted something, but would snap at anyone who disagreed. Additional communications from family members continued to arrive as the day went on. Everyone appeared to have an opinion on what I should do, including aunts, uncles, and cousins. Some expressed support and acknowledged the challenging situation I found myself in. Some were less sympathetic, calling me petty and harboring resentment from my early years. Particularly, one message stood out. It came from the grandma I was born to, the only one who had consistently been able to see through Emily's facade while we were children. She wrote, "You owe nobody your," tranquilly. "You've put a lot of effort into getting better. Never allow anyone to guilt you into reversing that advancement." Her remarks hit my already strained nerves like a bomb. I felt quiet certainty for the first time since Emily appeared at my door. I understood that even though I had no control over how other people would interpret my behavior, I could live with my choice. I made the decision to send a last email outlining my stance to Dad and Susan. I described the years of bullying, pouring my heart out, the hurt caused by their partiality, and the effort I had put in to get past the trauma I had experienced as a child. I clarified that even though I didn't want Emily to suffer, I couldn't save her. I wrote, "I hope you can understand that I have to put my own health first. I'm willing to provide Emily some short-term financial support, and I've volunteered to help her locate temporary housing. I can't let her into my house, though. It's about upholding the boundaries I require to remain complete and healthy, not about getting even or exacting revenge." Before I could stop myself, I pushed send and shut off my phone. I was aware that there would probably be more fights, guilt trips, and charges of being unforgiving. I just needed time to sort through everything that had transpired. Even as I sit here and write this post, I'm still torn. I look to you, Reddit, for perspective. Is it my fault for turning away my stepsister? Even though it seemed like she was in dire need of help, any opinions or insights would be very valued. Reddit, I appreciate you reading this far. I truly need another set of eyes to see this catastrophe. Edit Whoa. I had no idea this post would become so popular. I appreciate all of your kind words and encouragement. To answer some often asked questions. 1. Yes, I have in the past advised my parents to seek family therapy. They've consistently dismissed it, claiming that as a true family, we ought to be able to resolve conflicts among ourselves. 2. Before this episode, Emily had never admitted her wrongdoing or expressed regret. She had never before acknowledged that she had mistreated me, until she apologized to me at my door. For those who are curious, my mother's illness was cancer. We had little time to prepare, and it was abrupt and forceful. I believe that's part of the reason Dad was so keen to get married again and start the ideal blended family. 4. I have communication with a few of Emily's friends. I've heard that she is currently residing with one of them. Though I'm glad she's not homeless, I still feel bad about it. 5. I've thought about cutting off all communication with my family, as suggested by others. It's complex, and I'm currently in treatment to go through those emotions. Once again, I appreciate all of your help and guidance. Feeling acknowledged and validated after so many years of having my sentiments disregarded means more than you can imagine. If there are any noteworthy developments, I'll provide an update. First update, hi Reddit. Thank you so much for all of your advice and support on my initial post. First of all, seeing how many individuals could relate to my story has been amazing. Honestly, knowing that other people have had similar family drama has been both heartwarming and consoling. Now for the catch. Almost 2 weeks have passed since my last post, and a lot has happened. They have, in fact, become really intense. Family members have been bombarding me with calls and messages, ranging from guilt-tripping to outright hate. I've been making an effort to hold my ground, but it really wears me out. Through the family, I had learned that Emily was staying with a friend. I suppose I thought she would leave me alone and find another answer. Let me warn you, I was mistaken. I was working from home 3 days ago when I heard a loud noise coming from outside my flat. I initially tried to ignore it, assuming that my noisy neighbors were the cause of it. However, my heart fell as I heard Emily's voice. She was not inside my door, obviously inebriated, calling out my name and beating on the door. I could smell the heavy stench of booze through the door. Emily has always been a cruel drinker. She gets that trait from our father. I told her to go and that we could discuss when she was sober in an attempt to reason with her. Big error. She became even more irate, shouting that I was leaving her behind and labeling me as a bad sister. I became aware that she was attempting to pry open the door when I heard a thud against it. I became frightened. My only concern was keeping my house and myself safe. I thus dialed 911. I told them that my stepsister, who is now estranged, was getting violent and was attempting to break in. Emily would not stop yelling when I was on the phone. I'm fairly certain the vase beside my door broke when I heard something shatter. She was yelling at me about my lack of self-interest and how I owed her. Typical Emily, who sees herself as the victim at all times. It seemed like an endless wait for the police. I was leaping at every noise from the corridor or hiding in my bedroom. My neighbors were starting to come out and inquire as to what was going on. At last, the police arrived. After a disturbance in the corridor, Emily was taken away. The corridor was in disarray when I emerged. There were messes on my welcome mat, broken pieces in my favorite vase, and marks on my door from Emily trying to pry it open. I showed the police my statement and the texts and voicemails I had received from Emily. They were quite understanding and told me that phoning them had been the right decision. When they asked if I wanted to file charges, I begged for more time to think it over because I was feeling so overwhelmed. When they were gone, I just fell asleep on my couch. I was trembling and couldn't decide if I should yell, cry, or just stay in bed for a week. Susan texted me after that. My mother-in-law. She was upset with me for calling the police on Emily, saying that she and her father were let down by my actions. Naturally, they saw this as my fault in some way. After that, I turned off my phone. I cleaned up the mess and apologized to my neighbors for the remainder of the day. I made the decision to file charges for the attempted break-in and property damage after much back and forth. Although it wasn't simple, I had to put my own safety first and let Emily know that her actions weren't acceptable. The ramifications were severe. Dad and Susan were furious, accusing me of destroying the family unit. Several family members flooded me with texts. Some were encouraging, while others said I was exaggerating. After being freed, Emily went on a social media frenzy, portraying herself as the victim of her ruthless, uncaring sister. Since then, it hasn't stopped. Accounts from the police, conversations with the prosecutor, taking calls from relatives. I'm doubting everything, emotionally spent and worn out. I'm thinking of moving, possibly to a different city. The prospect of starting over far away from all of this family strife is becoming more and more appealing. I'm also considering cutting off all communication with my father and Susan. Their response to all of this has demonstrated that they will never truly understand and will never respect my boundaries. Maybe it's time to realize that I may not be able to have the loving family I've always desired, as much as it pains to say. And Emily, well, who knows? A part of me hopes that she will take this as a wake-up call, get assistance, and make a change in her life. Mostly though, I'm simply glad she's not in my life anymore. I'm still attempting to make sense of things. However, I wanted to give you all an update and thank you once more for your support. When I felt like my entire family was against me, your words on my initial post gave me the courage to defend myself. I'm open to hearing from anyone who has experienced something similar, or who may offer guidance on handling illicit items or cutting off communication with relatives. Thank you for reading this far, if you have. Feeling upset after years of having my emotions disregarded means a lot to me. Edit. Whoa, this update has received so much feedback. I appreciate all of your support and good thoughts so much. In response to a few typical queries, 1. Indeed, I am considering obtaining a restraining order. My attorney is assisting me in resolving this. 2. I replaced my locks and installed security cameras. In the meanwhile, until things settle down, I'm also staying with a buddy. And 3rd, to answer the question concerning Emily's early life, the answer is that she struggled. She was undoubtedly also messed up by our parents' favoritism, but that doesn't excuse what she's doing now. 4. My manager has been really laid back about everything. So don't worry about my employment. Taking a few days off to attend to all of this. Thank you once more for all of your help and guidance. It's not been easy, but it's really helped to know I'm not the only one. 2nd update. Hi Reddit. I'm back with more news, albeit I wish it was better news. I never would have predicted the extreme turn of events with my family, and I'm still in shock over the consequences. All of you have my gratitude for your support on my earlier posts. Your counsel and kind remarks have been a source of support at this trying time. About a month has passed since my last update. I've been attempting to deal with the fallout from Emily's attempted break-in and my choice to file charges during that period. Family calls and messages had started to taper off, and I mistakenly believed that perhaps, just possibly, things were becoming more manageable. I ought to have been more aware. Recall when I told you about Dad and Susan's anniversary vacation to Europe? Apparently, romantic trips are not as important as family drama. My cousin Marilyn called me last week to let me know that Dad and Susan had canceled their vacation and were returning home to handle the matter. Marilyn had heard them at a get-together with family, screaming that I was destroying the family and that they would make things right. The day following Marilyn's call, I was a bundle of nerves. My heart almost stopped when the knock eventually occurred. When I opened the door, Dad and Susan were standing there, appearing to have aged significantly in the weeks since I had last seen them. It was evident how disappointed and angry they were. Pushing past me into my flat, they said no more than hello. The most agonizing and passionate talk of my life ensued. Dad went on a rant about the importance of family loyalty and accountability. And he called me a vindictive, immature, and selfish person. With her typical passive-aggressive remarks, Susan interjected, suggesting that my problems were impairing my judgment and that I was exaggerating a typical sibling conflict. What was the most startling aspect? In fact, they implied that I ought to apologize to Emily. My refusal to act as her personal safety net was somehow worse than years of emotional abuse and bullying in their warped world. They blamed me for worsening the matter by calling the police and rejected the current attempt at break-in as a misunderstanding. I made an effort to clarify my perspective. I discussed my years of therapy and the boundaries I had to make for my own mental well-being. I also showed them Emily's drunken escapade police record. However, it felt like speaking with a wall. Nothing I said would alter their narrative, it was theirs to tell. The ultimatum then appeared. Dad, you told me I had to make a decision. I might consider myself no longer a member of the family, or I could agree to let Emily come in with me and dismiss the charges. He even included the well-known statement, my house, my rules, obligingly overlooking the fact that I haven't resided beneath his roof for 10 years. I would like to report that I showed them the door and stood tall. However, the reality, I lost it. Years of repressed hurt, annoyance, and rage finally released. I sobbed as I told them everything, how their favoritism had damaged me, how Emily's bullying had left me with scars I now have to cope with, and how their repeated rejection of my emotions had made me feel unworthy. I thought for a split second that I saw something flicker in Dad's eyes. Feeling guilty? Understanding, regardless of what it was. It gave way soon enough to a hardness I had never noticed before. He said I was exaggerating and harboring resentment from my early years. Susan jumped right in, minimizing my experiences and supporting Emily, saying that it was up to me to grow up and move on. The dispute intensified, people raised their voices, and irrevocable words were shouted. Dad delivered the last blow at the end, officially disowning me and removing me from the will. I lost the final strands of the family I had been clinging to so frantically in the space of an hour. I broke down on my couch and started crying uncontrollably after they departed. The physical blow of the gravity of what had just transpired struck me. I had always harbored a faint hope that my dad would eventually see the reality of the situation. Now that hope had vanished, irreparably broken. The days that followed seemed to fly by. I went through phases of deep anguish and numbness. I couldn't face the world, so I called in sick from work. Messages from relatives filled my phone. Some encouraging, some criticizing me for pressuring Dad to go to such extreme lengths. Took to gloating on social media. She wrote a lengthy message about family and forgiveness that she uploaded, casting me as the bad guy and herself as the sufferer. The quantity of positive remarks and likes was heart-stopping. It served as a sobering reminder of just how adept she is at skewing people's opinions. The legal aspect of the situation is intricate. To learn more about my options and rights, I'm working with an attorney. Sincerely, I don't want anything from them right now, but I do want to make sure I'm covered in case I have any objections to the will. We're also talking about the potential for Emily to be subject to a restraining order, since she has started posting threatening content on social media. I promise not to lie, Reddit. The most trying weeks of my life have been these past few. There are times when I doubt everything and feel guilty and insecure. Thank you to everyone who has been following my story. Your guidance and assistance have been invaluable. It is worthwhile to stand up for oneself, even if it means losing family, for those who may be thinking if they should do so in similar circumstances. Though difficult and unpleasant, you are worth it. It's worth it for your well-being and mental health. I have no idea what the future will bring. It is both thrilling and terrifying to consider starting over. But I feel like I'm in charge of my own story for the first time in a very long time. No more taking the blame for the family problems or compromising my needs to satisfy Emily's demands. I most likely won't provide another update. Again, I want to thank you all for your help. You don't realize how much it matters. Edit, I'm really grateful for the response. I appreciate all of your support and good thoughts. To respond to a few often asked queries. 1. Yes, I am recording every detail. I should keep a record of every conversation, my lawyer has recommended. Encompassing postings on social media. 2. For those who are curious about the relatives on my mother's side. Sadly, the most of them have accepted Dad and Emily's version of events. It's been heartbreaking and eye-opening. 3. For the first time in days, your reply made me giggle to the individual who volunteered to adopt me. I appreciate you doing it. Once again, thank you everybody. Your help has been a light bulb throughout this difficult period.